Welcome to Candidate Conversations, part of Delaware Debates 2016, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication and with support from AARP. I'm Delaware Public Media News Director Tom Byrne. This conversation, taped on the campus of Delaware State University, focuses on the race for governor, and we are joined by Republican Lacey Lafferty. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with the most basic question, which is why did you decide to run for governor?
I love the state of Delaware. I'm a lifelong Delawarean. You know, I go back 5 generations in this state, and I can tell you, my love for Delaware is so much so that I'm a retired law enforcement officer, worked in the communities, and I have heard, from a number of people, what can we do to make Delaware better? And we all have those concerns. And we've seen in the last 20 years that Delaware, this has not been an overnight thing. This has been something that's been steadily getting worse and worse. From elected career politicians that promise, at election time, come around and keep promising, to make things better, and it doesn't happen, and it just continuously get worse and worse. So I want to be able to go out here and take my expertise, my lifelong skills as a law enforcement officer, a job creator. I owned, businesses for the last 30 years and created jobs for people in my community. I want to be able to take these skills that I have learned and apply them to government.
Governor is the state's chief executive, so how would you describe the leadership style that you'll bring to the role if you're elected?
Well, creating businesses in my past and present as well, I would bring my expertise, job creation, entrepreneurship. I want to be able to be in the position to where I can create jobs for our youth that are very troubling as they spend years and years getting a college education and can't find a job after they graduate. This has to change. We have to be able to spur the economy. Again, create businesses that we want our youth to be able to stay here. We educate them here. We want them to stay here. I can bring that to the state of Delaware. Instead of investing so much in big business as our current structure does, we need to take those grants and low interest loans and apply them to the small business sector, and also deregulate. We have entirely too many regulations on new entrepreneurship as well as small businesses and big businesses that want to come to Delaware. We have to be able to rein in the regulation and make it easier for people to maintain businesses.
Let's talk about some specific issues, starting with state budget. State revenue estimates for the coming year don't paint a very rosy picture. Some have suggested looking harder at spending. There's been a fair amount of discussion, even some committees on looking at the revenue sources that the state has. Where do you feel the priority should be in making the Delaware budgetary structure more sound and making sure that Delaware's on the right budgetary track?
Well, we have a tremendous spending problem, but we also have a revenue problem in the state of Delaware. In my expertise, as far as fraud, corruption, and being able to apply that at every agency and reducing the spending, we cannot afford to be able to spend $15 million on bike trails. Mm-hmm. I mean, when we're looking at these kind of budgets and with a revenue stream that we do not currently have, it's kind of gone away in the last 10 years. We have to be able to be more, it's like, your checkbook 101. We all feel it, we all know it, and we apply that to government. We have to be able to pull in our spending and attacking the government agencies and being able to pull back like 5%. Everybody's budget. I don't know if you know anything about, the government. They always apply their next year's budget ahead 5% because they know it's going to be taken back. So we need to be able to go through every agency and rein it back at least 5%. And then on top of that, go into every agency and find out what the fraud and the corruption that's going on in there. I mean, that's where my expertise is. I was awarded by Governor Minner the Excellent Performance Award in 2007 because of my problem-solving skills. And to be able to, very immediately, we have elected officials here that seem to take months and years to come to decisions about government affairs. We need somebody that's willing to do it very quickly, that knows and is skilled and trained to do problem solving very quickly and decisively, and even under duress. This is what we lack in government. We're electing officials that do not have those skills. And we have to, be able to elect government officials, not people that just graduate college and say, okay, I'm going to run for city government or county government or state government. We need people with lifelong skills out here that has applied all of these and has worked, throughout their careers.
Let's talk specifically in the budget about one of the bigger issues, which is healthcare costs, both Medicaid and state employee health benefits. What can the state do to address those costs, which are the ones that are really pushing the budget higher and higher?
Again, this is, if you look back since in the last 8 years, and the president pushed, his Affordable Care Act, that has increased the health care cost. I mean, this act was not very beneficially sound as far as health care costs. It did the exact opposite. It didn't make it more affordable, it made it more expensive. We have to look at that. And I'm hoping the next president will look at that and be able to, get rid of some of it, keep some of it that is working, but there's a lot of it that's not working, to where the states, we can apply the same principle here. We look at some of it, it may be working, and look at others that we definitely know it's not working. And this is what's driven our healthcare cost up. So again, you're applying principles here to know and task forces to be able to go into these different agencies, particularly healthcare costs, and try to draw these costs down. We have to look at also our state benefit package, with our law enforcement, our teachers, and so on and so forth. Now, this is part of a perk package that, again, they're paid a particular wage. We can't take away from some of their benefits if we're not going to increase their rate of pay. So we have to look at the balance here. We want professional people to work for state government so it works very efficiently. So, this is what we need to do. If it's not working, get rid of it and apply something that will work for us.
Certainly one way to help increase revenue is to bring more jobs to the state of Delaware, broaden the tax base. Concerns about creating and retaining jobs in Delaware have certainly been front and center this past year, particularly with the merger of Dow, DuPont, and some of the concerns that raised here locally. What steps, if you were elected, would you take to boost economic growth, raise wages, create jobs, the things that would help improve that tax base?
Well, we have to certainly look into the regulations that we have currently, but it's holding a lot of small businesses back. It's holding a lot of entrepreneurship back. It takes a lot of effort to go out here and permits and regulations and fees to start a business. This is what we have to generate, the small business growth in this state. I know as an entrepreneur years ago, 35 years ago, in starting a business, I had a trucking business on the East Coast as well as agricultural commodities. I know what it's like to start a business out here. And back then, Delaware was a more business-friendly state than it is currently. I mean, DNREG, Department of Transportation, they increasingly, have regulations and permits and fees for every little thing to start. People cannot afford that. And again, we're going right back to the Department of Economic Development. They give grants as well as, low interest loans. And even in agriculture, they gave, loans, no interest loans to young farmers as well as, people getting in. We need to be able, instead of giving millions of dollars to Chase and different big businesses, because they're billion-dollar companies, they don't need money from the taxpayers here. They have money to operate on. We need to be concentrating on taking that taxpayer money and giving it, not giving it, but making it an opportunity for young people. Again, you're getting the young people back into work. If you can't find a job, let me help you create a job. Let me help you start your business. This is what we have to start doing. But we have to do this simultaneously with the crime that's influxed in the state of Delaware. We have to get our youth and people back to work here. And if not, drive the criminal element out to where people now are safe in their neighborhoods, in their communities, to go out here and work and create a business. And we can't do this when crime is as rampant as it is in the state of Delaware, particularly in Wilmington.
I want to get to crime in a little bit, but one other issue when you talk about young people is education. That has been a bit of a contentious issue in the state over the last couple of years, from plans to redistrict Wilmington schools to opting out of state assessment tests down to how schools were actually funded. There seems to be some serious concerns amongst a lot of people in this state about the way education is going, the direction education is going. How do you feel the state can be involved in improving education for its students?
Yeah, as a mother of an 11-year-old, and I am much as invested in public education, and my daughter goes to public schools downstate, I feel, and with my knowledge, and I was a school resource officer in the state police. I worked inside the schools, and what I saw what was going on in the schools. We have a serious discipline problem within schools. We need to be able to, again, this is me telling you to take government off the backs of the parents in the communities. I believe our Department of Education needs to be streamlined. I need the school system needs to go back to the communities, the counties, where the decisions need to be made. I mean, who knows our children better than the teachers, the schools that they go to, the school councils to make the decisions, as well as the parents. I mean, it's all a community effort, because the schools downstate aren't like the schools upstate, and vice versa. Same way on the west side of Sussex and the east side of Sussex. The community dynamics is entirely different. And when you go to each one of these schools, you see the difference. Of each, how children and teachers, even the way they teach, is different. I want to be able to streamline Department of Education. This is where, again, when a third of our budget is in Department of Education, there's a problem here. As small as Delaware is, we shouldn't be having these kind of problems. This is where we need to get rid of a lot of the top level six-figure salaries here. There's a lot of duplicated job titles that's going on in the Department of Education. We need to take that money and be able to, put it down to the teacher level, the student level, down where it's working within in the classrooms. I want to be able to, and again, this is talking from a school resource. What's going on in the classroom dynamics? I would like to be able to put, and it's very minimal as far as video cameras in the classrooms, to where it only protects the teacher. When you ask law enforcement to wear a body camera, you're asking the same thing about what the dynamics going in that classroom. And you see a lot of the problems that the teacher has trying to keep continuity, teaching continuity in that classroom, with a lot of disturbances that go on. We have to make the parents more involved in what's going on at the school level, especially when you have a disruptive child. And some of the parents want to, well, it's not my child's fault. It's the first inclination of the parent. When you have a video camera going on in that classroom dynamics, not only are you holding the teacher accountable, but you're holding that student accountable for their actions. And in that video can show that when there ever is a problem, that call the parent in, show them the video. This is what how your child's acting in class. We need to address it now, because the rest of the children in that classroom are suffering. They want to learn, and you have one or two that just aren't paying attention enough, and causing a disturbance. And when we start pulling all of these things simultaneously in and returning our school system back to the districts, and reducing the size of Department of Education, as far as do we need that many superintendents in each county? Do we need all this top level of duplicated career titles that we have currently going on in there? I think when we start taking the money and putting it where it is needed, down at this the classroom level, you're going to see a difference.
How about violent crime? Let's go back to that issue. How can you reduce violent crime, not only in Wilmington, but throughout the state?
Well, coming from my experience, we have to be able to take control of our neighborhoods. Typically in any neighborhood, as far as we have, Wilmington's big, but we have that same mentality in smaller neighborhoods, that we have a lot of transient criminal activity that's going on throughout Delaware. Again, you're talking about a state that's only 100 miles long. To where a lot of the transient criminal activity, drugs, and even criminal behavior without the drugs, are coming from your cities that we're surrounded with. Okay, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, and down south, even comes up from Virginia. It comes and proliferates throughout Delaware. We have to be able to drive these people out of here that aren't taxpayers, aren't working here. They're just dealing drugs, or they're just typically robbing people. And we do that with community relations and law enforcement, more law enforcement. We don't have enough law enforcement out in the streets. I can tell you that as a law enforcement officer, on many a day that I work by myself, on the western side of the county. And that's not near enough, law enforcement, to be able to go, and law enforcement becomes reactive instead of proactive, to be able to drive out the criminal element. We have to increase law enforcement in the communities, to be just like in Wilmington. we have to show a presence. When you show a presence in the community, whether it be in Sussex or be in Wilmington, in those particular target areas, the bad actors, as I call it, bad actors, they won't stay there. They will leave. You clean up that community, just like the abandoned houses that they have up in. This is where the transient activity come and they stay in those abandoned houses. You have to clean this up. You have to put substations in those target neighborhoods. And when the people in those communities know that the police presence is there, whether it be on bike, foot patrols, cars, horseback, whatever, when they know that their community is secure and the police are there to protect them, they're going to communicate more with the police because they know. I mean, anybody put in that position are not going to communicate when they know the police are going to leave and we don't know when they're going to come back, and when they only appear when the phone rings. You call 911 and then they appear. If they know that they're going to be in that area, they have a working relationship with that police officer. They know who that police officer is. They know they can call that police officer or that substation and have somebody there right away. I can tell you, drug dealers that stand out on the street and deal drugs, they know who they know the community. They know, basically, they'll know who lives in whose house. And when, a police officer comes in that area and says they want to stop at this person's house and get information, don't you think that those guys aren't watching and they know? And then when that police officer leaves, they go over there and they say, well, what did you say to that police officer? Because they know if they get locked up, they know where that information came from. So you have to understand the element of what the community are living with in fear of these people, retaliation. I mean, anybody would do the same thing in their position. So we have to be able to take law enforcement, put them in those areas, okay? Substations. You drive out the criminal element. They'll go away. They're not going to stay on that street corner with other police officers.
But there is a bit of a new dynamic that's starting to rise up, because beyond the violent crime, this summer has been a difficult one throughout the streets of this country. Number of high-profile incidents with police shooting individuals and obviously police officers being shot as well. That's raised some of the tensions within communities, between the community and law enforcement. If elected, how can you address this issue and start to build maybe some bridges that need to be built in those areas?
Again, with a police presence, people have to understand, just like a conversation we've had before, I encourage people to take ride-alongs. Know what the police officers are doing out here in your communities. In the same way with police officers, get in your communities and walk around, talk to people, let them get to know you. I mean, that's a great tool. Police officers are the people. They're just like anybody else. They're out here wanting to help, everybody in the community, across the state. It doesn't matter. What I want to be able to do is create what they call a ready reserve force. We had something like this 30 years ago. It's a ready reserve is taking retired police officers and are from municipals or state and putting them out in the community, and whether they can work, something that's community driven, as well as different events, festivals, things of that nature. Instead of taking patrol officers off, put the ready reserve units out there at lesser cost because they're retired personnel, at a lesser cost, utilizing their expertise, and let them go out here in the communities, whether we need them for various different activities, whether it's community-based or we need them for controlling, public uprisings, or we need them for search and rescue operations. This is where we can utilize more officers on the road to get to more people out here in the community and answer their questions and their concerns. Again, with these different situations, we have to be able, a lot of it is frustration over the economic times that we've had in the last 8 years. A lot of the people that are uprising aren't working. They don't have, they're not making any money. We need to get these, it's going to be something that's going to have to happen simultaneously. You've got to attack the crime issue and put people back to work at the same time. And being able to, again, find jobs for our youth to where they're working and they're making money and they feel good about themselves. This is why it gets them off the street. It gets them, the frustration levels lower. This is where the interaction with law enforcement, this is why we have the law enforcement days, once a year. People come out and gather in the community. and they get to know one another. And community policing is a big part of what law enforcement does, is building that rapport with the people that you're working with. You're working with the community every day you go out there, or every night when you go out there, and you're doing it to save lives. You're doing it to protect people, serve and protect. So with that experience, I know I can reduce the crime in the state of Delaware. We're working on a 65% recidivism rate in this state. This is unbelievable that people get arrested, go to jail, come back and do the same thing. This constant philosophy about in jail while they're in corrections, oh, we're gonna give you rehab, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and it's not working. It's not working. We have to be able to help the economy, improve the economy, but again, reducing regulations, from direct, suppressing some of this over-regulation that we have to make people go out here and go back to building up new businesses, particularly in this city. Look at the city. People are afraid to go to the city now. We have to be able to control that situation so people will go out and start a new job. If they can't find a job, let's help you create that job. Let's help you create that business. I would love to see people back, 25, 30 years ago that build their own businesses, whether it's the mom and pop on the street, hairdressers or their own lawn business, anything. Whatever you wanted to do with your life, make it a mission. Make it so you enjoy getting up in the morning and doing the things that you want to do, and in your career is something that it seems like a hobby to you because you enjoy it that much. We have a lot of disgruntled people right now, and it has to do with a lot of it. They don't have a future. They don't know what they want to do with themselves.
Lacey Lafferty, Republican Party candidate for governor. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And so you can find all of our candidate conversations online at DelawarePublicMedia.org and DelawareDebates.org. Candidate conversations are taped at Delaware State University and are part of Delaware Debates 2016, produced by Delaware Public Media in collaboration with the University of Delaware's Center for Political Communication and with support from AARP. Thanks for watching.